Hi, I'm Seamless, and I've got like an hour before my next lesson. By an hour, I mean a half an hour, and I want to very quickly address something that's actually come up in pretty much every single lesson I've had so far this month. Which, real quick, let's check how many that is. 4, 8, 11, 15, 19, 24, 28, 20, 32, 31... 32, 33. I've had 33 lessons so far this month, and just about every one of them, some shade of this has popped up in some particular way. Basically, it's the questions about like why doing this or that is bad, and I've actually mentioned this a fair bit in previous advice videos, which I guess this is what these are now. And I just want this to be its own thing, which is that, like, if you have a question about whether or not one process is bad versus another process, or why professionals say to do something else, or why someone else is saying, like, don't do this, this is bad, don't do this, this is bad. If you yourself cannot detect the appreciable difference between what you want to do versus what people say you should do, then there's no reason for you not to do what you want to do. Some examples. Some people, the very last one that I remember, the last lesson I had, where the guy asked a question about equalizer filters versus regular filters. And the answer to that question is that every filter is going to be different one way or another. Equalizers are just filters and just a very specific kind of presentation. And like I use the parametric EQ2 a lot as just my regular filters for like stuff like band passes and filters and low passes and notches and that kind of thing. Versus like something like Love Filter, which is like designed to be a filter bank, right? It's a bank of filters. But the actual technical difference between all of those is actually probably nothing at all, because they're both designed by the same people and the same program and the same development and that kind of thing. And there's even like, I mean, you could even make the fruity Love filter act like the EQ2 with the peak filter idea. That'd be kind of hard, but you could do it. It'll be more or less identical. However, different manufacturers are going to do different things to different filters, and that's just going to be different from filter to filter, not necessarily from EQ to filter, any more than just from filter to filter. And this is one of those things, though, where the question was like, well, should I be using a filter for like a real filter for filter tasks, or am I doing something wrong by using EQ? And if you have to ask the question, the answer is basically it doesn't matter. And like it's really just kind of up to you about how it sounds. And if there's a difference, there's a difference. If it's good or bad, then it's really just up to you. It's up to you how that works out. And this came up again with the lesson before that with a guy who was talking about mastering. And like his process is a bit more traditional, where like, you know, he does the production in a project, and then he stems it all out, and then he does the mixing with the stems, keeps everything below 0 dB, and then he renders that out as the pre-master, and then he masters it in a separate project. 3 projects for a single song, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also nothing wrong with doing what I do, which is I keep everything in the same project. I do the production in the same project. I do the mixing in the same project of the same things I just made, and I do the mastering on that same project from top to bottom. It's all live, all happening right in front of you, and you can change everything on whenever. And like there's pros and cons for a lot of it, but there's not, like, signal path wise, it's basically the same. Once upon a time there was a difference, and there was reasons for doing that kind of stuff, but for now, no, there's really not a reason. There's really not a difference, is what I should be saying. And it's one of those things where if you're having a problem trying to get your mastering and mix set up in a certain way, while it is a workflow change, signal path and processing wise is not all that different. And there are other minute changes about certain things, like you have a little bit more control over direct phase for particular things, but you had that as well with, you know, plug and delay compensation. So you do have options on either way to handle just about every aspect of everything that you're trying to do. And if you have a hard time, you know, understanding basic principles of things like mixing and compression and that kind of stuff, those problems are going to be exactly as bad on either of those particular workflow methods. And which is another way of saying that if it sounds like it's not different, it's because it's not different. I mean, it's not appreciably different. There might be literal differences, tiny differences between things like using an EQ for a filter versus using a filter for a filter. But like, if you can't detect them, if you can't tell, then no one else will. And the people who can are like, this has to do, you know, the difference between 44.1 kilohertz versus 192 kilohertz. There are definitely people who can tell the difference, and there are definitely like environments where you can tell the difference. But that's like an unimaginably small niche of people. It's not even like a market. It's so much smaller than like even, and like for you to be asking these questions means that you're putting far more effort in conceptualizing these problems than anyone even close to being a regular music listener is. And while you might not be as amazing and have the golden years of like, you know, the $10,000 an hour mastering engineers who all worked for like, you know, Led Zeppelin or something like that, it's like you're still far and above in the abilities of your average music listener, and they will never be able to tell the difference of things that you can, even if you're like the noobiest of noobs. So don't worry about that. I mean, it's really just about, so there are so many things and so many questions that can be answered with, if it sounds good, it's fine. And like someone else was saying about, like, you know, like, how do professional people make it sound professional? And like, do I need to do this to make it sound professional? Do I need to do this to make it sound professional? And like, the answer to that question is, the only requirements to make something sound professional is make it sound professional. Any way that you can think to do that, that you can figure out how to do that on your own, it doesn't matter if it's the most outlandish and weirdest process ever. If it accomplishes the results that you want, it's fine. It's all about results. And really, these are things where, like, if you didn't tell anybody how you did something, if you didn't tell anybody what particular methods you used, and you ask other people what they thought happened or what they thought was going on, more often than not, they're not going to know, or they're not going to be able to tell, or they're going to, if they think it's good, they're going to sort of project their ideas of what good production is and how they did that kind of thing. Like, I ran into that a lot when I was coming up as a new producer, is the idea that, like, if I think something is good, it does not necessarily mean that it was done in a way that was different from what I'm doing. You know, like, and I mentioned this a lot about how, like, you know, the top end super producers they're not all necessarily like sound design professor geniuses. Most of them don't really have as much of a handle on what they're doing as even you do, which is not to say that they needed that either, or that even you need that. Like, I put way more work into sort of my sound design than is absolutely necessary, and that's fine. I recognize that, and I do that because I want to, not because I think I need to, and that's an important distinction. So, recap, if it sounds good, then it's good. That's the only rule. That's the only rule it's ever been. Forever. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.